Hey everybody, welcome to Mammoth Interactive's YouTube channel. First of all, I want to thank you for watching this video. And remember that this channel doesn't do Patreon. Instead, we sell our digital courses down below. And every single dollar that we get from the products you buy below goes into making more content. The best way to help out this channel and Mammoth Interactive is to subscribe to Mammoth Interactive's huge library of content. Get thousands of hours and hundreds of courses for a low price down below. We have a monthly option and a yearly option. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the video.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our Dash course. In this course, you're going to learn how you can build apps with Python and Dash. We're going to build two apps, and I'm going to preview those projects for you in this lecture. We are going to learn how to work with Python, Dash, Plotly, and also Altair to build these two apps in slightly different ways. Starting off, this is our first project. We're going to build out our Dash app with Python, and we are going to learn how we can set up the layout, how we can build HTML elements with Python and Dash components with Python. Then we're going to build this graph and populate it with data. And as well, we're going to allow user input to be able to affect the graph. And second project, we're going to build our second app, and it is going to be here, another data visualization project. This time, we are going to have two different charts. We are going to have a scatter chart and a histogram. We're going to learn how we can load data from Vega datasets, how we can build the layout of this app, and how we can create these charts with Altair. And as well, we can take user input to affect the charts. Awesome, okay. And those will be the two projects that we will build in this course. So join me in the next lecture where we will learn what is Dash and why it's so important to learn. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our course. In this lecture, we're going to talk about what is Plotly and Dash and why you should learn it. All right, we'll start with an overview. Python has many visualization libraries. You may be familiar with matplotlib, as well as pandas for helping. And many of these visualization libraries, like matplotlib, they are static. All right, meaning you can't interact with them, they can't update dynamically. So we need to use a library like Plotly because it will allow us to build interactive charts. Plotly itself builds interactive images, and then Dash, which was built by Plotly, can create dashboard web apps. So you can use the two together to create interactive graphs and charts. Let's do an overview of Plotly because we will be using Plotly in this course. Plotly is an open source library, and it is for general data visualization. You can build interactive visualizations with Plotly, which is what makes it non-static. There are libraries for JavaScript, React, R, and Python, so you can actually use Plotly with multiple programming languages. The most popular is Python's version of Plotly because Python is the #1 language for data science, data visualization, and machine learning. Using Plotly by itself without Dash allows you to build interactive plots as HTML files. And users can zoom in, they can select, they can hover, they can interact with these HTML files, with these plots. But if you just use Plotly alone without Dash, you can't connect to changing data sources. So the data will actually be static because it's locked into the exported state, which is the state of the data when the Python script was run. So if you actually want to update the data in the HTML Plotly image, you have to rerun the Python script to regenerate the HTML file. So that is if you use Plotly alone. We're going to use Plotly with Dash to build not only interactive images, but also make them dynamic dashboards. And that is going to allow us to do three things. We want to make plots interact with each other, interact with components, and update in real time. So how can we achieve all of that? Well, we can use Dash to build a dashboard. All right, so let's talk about Dash. Also an open source library, actually built by the Plotly company, and it allows you to build a full dashboard, which will allow you to create this data visualization. experience where you can present your projects or you can analyze your data right there on the web. So you can build web apps really quickly with Dash, because instead of creating an HTML file like Plotly alone, Dash will actually build a dashboard web app. So you're building a website at a local URL, specifically 127.0.0.1 at port 8050. And you can visit and interact with the dashboard online as a web app. And it's quite fast and convenient to do so with Dash. So you can really quickly get your projects up and running on the web. And that is Plotly and Dash. With Dash, you can build not only regular web apps, but also specifically dashboards for any kind of data science or machine learning project. Coming up, we're going to talk about the few prerequisites that you will need for this course. So join me in the next lecture. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our course. In this lecture, we'll talk about the very few prerequisites that you will need to take this course. First, we are going to include a prerequisite section for you with beginner Python coding skills, because you will need to know how to code in Python before you can actually start using Plotly and Dash, which require at least one programming language like Python. So we're going to include for you in this course a prerequisite section. If you already know how to code in Python, then you can just skip that prerequisite section and jump right into the sections on building your first Dash apps. As well, there are some skills that are not required at all, but they would help you for sure if you know how to build websites in the markup language HTML, if you have any HTML experience, and if you have any data visualization experience or data science, working with different libraries like Matplotlib, perhaps. If you have that experience, that is great. It will definitely help you, but it's not required. It will just make it easier to follow along. As well, you will need a code editor with Python support, and you can use a free online code editor known as Google Colab, just at the link colab.research.google.com. This means you don't have to download or install anything. You can just start coding at that website. You can also just use any code editor on your computer if you install Python support for it. So you can use your own code editor, but you have to make sure you have a Python extension and that you have Python installed as well. So those are your two options. And I recommend just following along in Google Colab because that's what I will be using. So it's going to be the easiest way for you to just follow along as a beginner. And that is what you will need to take this course. Awesome. Join me in our next section. We are going to jump into our projects. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our course. In this lecture, we are going to begin building our first Dash app. Here I am in Google Colab, which you can access at colab.research.google.com. And here is where I can code in Python to build my Dash app. You could also use any code editor you wish. All right, so we'll begin by installing Dash. And here in Google Colab, to access the console, we use an exclamation mark. But if you're not using Google Colab, then you can just access the terminal or the command line. And then we're going to call pip install to install a new dependency into the project. And I'm going to install Jupyter Dash because I'm here in Google Colab, which creates what's known as a Jupyter notebook for online Python development, just coding in Python online. But if you're not using Google Colab, if you're using an offline code editor, then you'll want to just pip install Dash instead of Jupyter Dash. You see, Jupyter Dash was created by Dash to enable Dash to work on Jupyter notebooks like Google Colab. All right, then we can run this code cell, and we're going to install Jupyter Dash into this project. Here we'll see these messages collecting Jupyter Dash, collecting Dash as well, because Jupyter Dash is just an extension of regular Dash. And you'll collect all of the required Dash components that are part of Dash. A lot of the requirements for Dash are already satisfied because we're using Google Colab. And then at the very end of the cell, you'll get the message successfully built Dash and successfully installed all of these different dependencies, Dash components, Dash render, and C2 HTML, etc. And you can read all of those if you're interested. Just copy that line and paste it in here. You'll see successfully installed ANSI2 HTML dash core components dash HTML components dash render dash table Flask compress and Jupyter dash. And that is all been installed thanks to our one line here, pip install Jupyter dash. All right, so that is going to install everything we need to start building Dash here in Google Colab. All right, awesome. Next up, now that we have installed Jupyter Dash, I'm going to add a new code cell and I'm going to import it into our project. So from Jupyter Dash, I'm going to import the class Jupyter Dash. We can access this Jupyter _dash object because we just installed it. And from there, we have to import whatever we want to use. So in my case, I'm importing Jupyter Dash. If you are not using a Jupyter notebook like Google Colab, then you would just import Dash from the Dash module. So it would look slightly different. But the functionality is all the same. You'll just have some minor differences between what you need to use Jupyter Dash versus regular Dash. All right. As well, next up, we have to import Dash core components. So I'm going to import Dash core components, and that is one of the dependencies that we just installed. Remember, we saw it here, Dash core components. So we're going to put that to use in this project. As well, we're going to put to use Dash HTML components, and that is all that we'll need for now. Awesome. Okay. Next up, I am going to start by creating a new Jupyter Dash app. So I'm going to create a variable named app, and I am going to call Jupyter Dash, and I'm going to pass in __name __, which will be compiled to main when you run the code cell. So this is how you create a new Jupyter Dash instance. Now, if you're not using Google Colab or Jupyter Dash, if you're just using regular Dash, then you would just call app equals dash dot dash __, name __. So you would just, instead of using Jupyter Dash, you would grab the Dash module and you'd use the Dash class instead of Jupyter Dash. They both achieve the same thing, just slightly different ways of calling that. So do take note of that. For the purposes of a beginner and following along with this course, I definitely recommend using Google Colab because you can easily follow along. All right, as well, we're going to need the Plotly Express module. This will allow us to build figures or graphs. Plotly Express is part of Plotly, which itself is part of Matplotlib, and it will help you build graphs, figures, charts, which is very commonly done with Dash apps because often Dash apps are built for showing data science projects or machine learning projects, and therefore you want to be able to show charts and graphs. So let's as well import plotly.express, and typically it's usually imported as PX for short, Plotly Express. Okay, then I am going to create a new data frame here using Plotly Express.data.tips. All right, so we're going to set that up. This will allow us to have some data for our project. Okay, then we can call print app to see what we have created. Let's run this code cell, and this is going to import all the required libraries here. It's going to create a data frame and an app. And the result we get is Jupyter-Jupyter-app.Jupyter-object. So this means we successfully created an object that is of type Jupyter Dash at this memory address. Awesome. Okay, that's exactly what we wanted. Next up, let's add another code cell. And let's give our app a layout. And as well, we're going to put a graph into that layout. So we are going to work on that coming up in the next lecture, where we're going to build out a graph and show some data. We can already start running the app though. We can call app.run_server. This will launch the app in a new tab. You can also set the mode to equal inline if you want to run the app right here in your project. But you'll get this message, no layout exception. The layout was none, at the time that run server was called. Make sure to set the layout attribute before running the server. So you will want to set app.layout first. Okay, so I am going to just cut this. And before I call app.runServer, I'm going to set app.layout. And what we're going to do is use HTML to create a new element, such as a div. Then we can grab html.h1 and put in some text here, in h1. And I'm going to put in some text here, my-app. Okay, so now we have app.layout. And we are setting the layout property of our dash app. We're using html.div, and we are creating a new heading 1. Now you may be wondering, where is HTML coming from? Well, HTML is actually dash HTML components. So let's import that as HTML. This is how we can render HTML components in a dash app. We have this module, dash HTML components, exactly for that. So you can look in the documentation for dash HTML components to see all the different components, but basically you can create any type of HTML component you want. For example, here I've created a div, and then inside of that div, I've created a heading 1, meaning the largest heading type. Now, let's see, if I run this app, I am going to get, okay, HTML is not defined. That's just because if you change something in the previous code cell, you have to rerun that code cell again before you can rerun the second code cell. All right, so make sure you do that. Great, then we have set app.layout, and we've set it to equal div.html. We'll also get this message that our address was already in use. So because I already launched my server once, and I got the error, I'm going to just set runtime, and I'm going to set factory restart runtime. And I'm also going to then change the GPU. But basically, factory reset runtime, it clears your whole code. So you'll have to run everything again. And we do that in order to clear that server. As well, you can change the runtime type and add a hardware accelerator. The code cells will run faster. Then you can hit runtime run all, and that's going to rerun all of our cells again. All right, this time they're running faster because I have my GPU enabled. There we go, okay. We're starting from the top here. We are installing Dash again, then we're creating our Jupyter app, and finally, we're running my Dash app. And look at that, now we have this heading 1, my Dash app. So keep those few things in mind. You have to set app.layout before you can run a server. Also, if you make a change in a previous code cell, you have to run that code cell if you want the changes to be applied, because each code cell is run as an individual block, but it can use variables in code cells above. And also, if you run the server one time, but then it doesn't run, it crashes, you will have to often go to runtime and factory reset the runtime. That's going to clear the server. Otherwise, you'll get that message that we saw, which said that the port was unavailable because it was currently in use, because the server was running. Okay, and here we go. Now we can see we have our first Dash app. It says my Dash app. We can put in other HTML elements as well. For example, we could put html.p, and we could put in paragraph as the string. Now, if I run this code cell again, look at that. I have my Dash app and I have paragraph. Okay, and any type of HTML element you want, you can add to your app, to your Dash app. That is exactly what this Dash HTML components is for. Awesome. Okay, that was a quick win of how you can launch your first Dash app right here in Google Colab. Next up, we are going to learn how we can build a graph with data in our app, because that is commonly what you'll see Dash apps being used for. Dash apps can build not just regular apps, but also data science visualization projects and machine learning presentations. So you can show off the results of all of your projects. Join me in the next lecture where we will add a graph to our app. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our course. In this lecture, we are going to continue our Dash app project. Previously, we built out a Hello World quick Dash app, In this lecture, we're going to learn how we can actually build a graph with data in our app. All right, so currently we have a heading 1 that says my dash app. We also have a paragraph. Let's add another element here, and this time we're not going to use HTML, but we're actually going to use dash core components. So often you'll see this shortened to DCC. So we can just refer to this whole module dash core components as DCC. So let's add from DCC a new graph object. So this is different from an HTML element. It's a dash core component, and it's going to build a graph. All right. Typically, you want to give this graph an ID. For example, graph. Okay. Next up, we are going to add an HTML.label, and we are going to put in here an array starting with the color scale. Then we're going to use DCC to build a drop-down. So we're going to use dash core components again. The ID of this drop-down is going to be color scale drop-down. Clearable we'll set to false, so we cannot clear it. The value we can set to plasma. And options, we can create an array for that. I'm going to loop through for every color in px, which was Plotly Express, dot colors dot named color scales. So this will give me every single color scale. All right, and here as well, not only that, but I want to add a label. So, oops, let's see what happened there. Oh, I just hit run accidentally. Okay, so I want to add here into this dictionary. The label is going to be the color, and the value is also going to be the color for every color in px.colors.named color scales. Then I just want to make sure that here I have my drop down being closed. Great, and then my div should be closed as well as my label. Okay, great, everything is closed properly. All right, now if I run this cell, I'm going to see here my dash app, welcome, as well. I have this graph now, and I have a color scale, which allows me to select from different colors for my graph. This gives me all the different color options. We have reds, we have YLOR-BR, we have deep, gray, ice, all these different color options. And this was all thanks to dash core components. So we now have a heading 1, we have a paragraph, we have a graph, and we also have a label which contains this drop-down menu. And that's all that we just managed to create. Awesome. So you see how easy it is to quickly create dash apps. Next up, we are going to learn how we can actually populate this graph with data. Okay, so for that, let's go back into the same code cell, and I am going to define a function here that will be called update figure, and I'll pass in here my color scale. I'm going to return here Plotly Express. Remember, Plotly is a library for building graphs, charts, and figures. And I'm going to return a scatter plot. So if I'm using plotly.scatter, px.scatter, this means I'm going to be creating for me a bunch of data points, like a scatter plot. I do have to pass in here several values. Okay, first I have to pass in my data frame, df. I have to pass in an x, and I'm just going to call this x. As well, my y, I'm going to pass in y. Then my color, I can set to size. As well, there's a color continuous scale. I'm going to set that to equal the color scale passed in. There's a render mode argument. We are going to use WebGL with the web graphics library. That is the typical render mode for rendering content on the web. Then we can also give this a title, y versus x. All right, so now we have a function that is going to update our figure. And if I go into my preview here, well, you'll see that we still don't actually see the data. So one more thing that we have to add is a callback, which will actually do the updating of the graph. So this just defines the function, but we need to define a callback. So just make sure it's above update figure. We're going to use ampersand at app.callback to create a new callback. And I'm going to use here output in order to produce some output and also similarly input. Now, in order to use output and also input, we do have to import these. So go to the top of this cell and enter here from dash.dependencies. We need to import input and also output. This is going to allow us to update our graph, okay? So what do we pass here into input and output? Let's start with output. We are going to pass in our graph because we want to update the graph that has the ID graph, and we want to use figure, which will allow us to use update figure. Then the input. The input here is actually going to be an array. So inside of this array, we have the input, which is going to be color scale dropdown. Okay, so this means that whenever there is a change here on this color scale dropdown, just make sure here, by the way, that you use a hyphen instead of an equal sign in this ID. So whenever the color scale dropdown is interacted with, that's going to be considered input, and we're going to get its value from that. So we're going to get the value of that dropdown, whatever the user selects, and we're going to use that to produce the graph. So now let's run this code cell again, and I'm going to scroll down here, and just after a moment we'll see here is our graph, and if I select a color scale, it's going to be the selected value. Okay, next, how do we put the data onto the page? Well, it all comes down to what data frame we're using. Okay, so if we go to our data frame, we have here px.data.tips. This actually refers to a specific data set inside of Plotly Express. So Plotly has several data sets that you can use for testing. Tips is one of them. This has a bunch of data on tips where y is the tip and x is the total bill. So in order to actually use that, here inside of px.scatter, I can't just pass in x and y. I have to pass in total bill, and I have to pass in here tip. So I have to pass in for x and y the exact names of the values that I had in my data frame. So because my px data frame has x total bill and y tip, I have to use those exact same names. Okay, so now if I rerun this cell, okay, let's see, we get here tip. Oh, just make sure you only have one quotation mark like that. Then if you still don't see the data in the graph, just make sure that you rerun the previous code cell as well, because you have to make sure that this data frame has been initialized. So that's why often putting all the code into just one code cell is easier, because you won't have to remember, did I run the previous code recently or not? So just make sure to rerun the previous code cell and then run the current code cell, because that is going to reinstantiate df for us. Okay, now if we scroll down, look at this. We now have data here in our app. So we have the title of our chart, y versus x. The convention for a chart is to typically title it y versus x. We have the y label tip and the x label total bill. Then we have a bunch of data points, and the color scale is plasma. And here, the size is what indicates the color scale, referring to the number of instances. So for example, if there's only one instance of this total bill and tip, if there's only one instance of that coordinate, then the color is blue. But if there are 6 instances of that coordinate, then the size and the color is yellow. We can also change the color scale here with our selector, and look at that. We now have a whole different color scheme. So this allows us to set that. We could optionally just manually set that and not allow it to change. For that, all you have to do is, not allow this drop down. You could just have the value preset. And just like that, we have built out our first Dash app with data being shown. Just like that, in just less than half an hour, we've been able to create this. And that is just awesome, because now you're going to be able to show your data science or your machine learning projects to any person, even if they don't have any experience with programming or data science. And it's quite valuable because with Dash, you can quickly find a way to tell stories with your projects. That's quite important for getting your projects out there. Awesome. Okay, now that we have successfully built our first project, I'm going to show you how you can build a second project in a slightly different format, but still using Dash. So join me in our next section where we are going to build another Dash app.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching this course. If you want to watch the rest of the course, the link is down below. Not only will you get the access to this course, but you'll get access to a lot of other courses in a huge bundle, and it's on sale today. So buy before the sale ends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.